So we're here for another episode of Entering the Sports World. I'm here with Lambton College Sports and Rec alumni and host of the WinCity Podcast, Drake Demore. Thanks for coming on, Drake.
Hey, thanks for reaching out to me, Bryce. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So you and I are both somebody who's attended Lambton College. We'll start there. So what made you want to go to Lambton College?
Well, it's a pretty interesting story, I think, at least. It goes back to, it's actually 9 years ago today is the day that we had orientation for SRA, Sports and Recreation Administration at the time. But in the years prior to that, like being in high school and they're like, you got to figure out what you're going to do, all this stuff. I didn't know that like Sports and Rec or HK was like I didn't know it existed. Didn't know you can like work in sport and stuff like that. So in grade 11, I did my co-op at the WFCU Center here in Windsor, and that's where the Windsor Spitfires play. That was the season where they won their second OHL and Memorial Cup championship. I was there for the OHL win, so it was really cool. So what I did was I knew someone who worked at the ticket sales booth, and my mom knew him, so she got me into the event management program, right, or department there for the co-op. And when I was there, the guy, his name was Sean Loist. He's with I think he's with the Odd in Kitchener right now, so he's like the operations guy there. And he was like, what do you plan on doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just wanted to work somewhere cool for the co-op instead of going to like Freshco or something like everyone else did. So he's like, well, this is what I did in school. He took I think he took Lambton, or he went to Durham and then came to Windsor for HK. So he introduced me to the possibility of going to school for such a thing. And then from there, I was looking at Fanshawe, Durham, Lambton, and Lambton had the best success rate for employment based on the programs. So it being convenient and stuff like that for travel, I settled on Lambton eventually, and don't regret it. That's for sure.
That's cool. So with that, so you were there for the OHL, the second Mem Cup, which would have been the Taylor Hall, Ryan Ellis, all those guys there. Yeah. What was that like being around?
That was cool.
That firsthand.
Yeah, that was really cool because at the time, like the year prior, we had season tickets. The year of, we had season tickets. So once I started working there, I was going to every game. But if not, I was pretty much at every game, right? That's a really special moment for 2 years for Windsor. Windsor Hockey, something I talk about on the podcast all the time with people who were on the team or whatever, right? But it was just cool just to be around them at times because I would show up sometime during the day to do a couple hours, just get your hours in for co-op, and they'd be practicing, and I stored a stick and ball, orange ball underneath the stairwell and just play hockey by myself and stuff like that. So it was cool to just run into them, not a lot, like not that we like got to know each other or anything, but it was always like, hey, how's it going? And I'd be like, oh, that was Ryan Ellis, just passing through the hallway and stuff like that. So those are like all those little things like that in sport and rec are things that I think have been very cool to cross paths with people and stuff. But being there for the I think it would have been, I think they got him in game 5 or 6 with, I think it was with Matt Duchesne and Brampton and all those guys. And I, made my way down to the ice, and history repeated itself in the Mem Cup in 2017. But yeah, it's just cool just to be like, that's a special moment for Windsor and for hockey, junior hockey, So that's one thing that, it's like a topic for the show. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was very young at the time. Like I was just entering my teens really, and that team was, as they'd say now, a wagon. They had 7 guys who ended up making the NHL full time off that team, a bunch. But going back to Lambton, what are some of your favorite memories looking back on it now?
Well, yeah. So when you brought that up, I was like, man, I don't know. Some of the memories maybe I can't really talk about because they're maybe not. There's some really good ones in class and stuff like that, but obviously, one thing that was part of it was, I was young, like your age probably, and had a lot of fun with my friends, met a lot of friends who I'm going to go see on Friday actually in Wallsburg. So that is one thing that really sticks out to me. But in more seriousness, learning everything on the business side of things was huge for me, and to kind of get me to where I'm at now. Some things that stick out, like moments that stick out to me, are definitely like the trip to Algonquin in our third year. That was awesome. A couple projects that we were able to do. We had to do a marketing video for the program. Like, if you wanted someone to come, make a video to try and draw them in, right? So that was a lot of fun. We got to learn some good marketing through that, and running events and stuff like that. Like they used to have the sports symposiums and summits, or I don't know if they have them or what they call them now, but those were really vital experiences. And again, working with all the guys and girls that I met at the time, it made it a lot of fun, which is one thing about SRA. A lot of people look at it and think like, oh, these guys it's just a gym class all the time, right? But it is fun. People have fun with each other, but that's the environment that you're getting into in work, right? So a lot of those like particular events and stuff like that we were able to do and conduct, those what really stick out in regards to the program, because they push practical experience, hands-on experience, and all that stuff for me was what stood out.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed as well. Like even just my group that I have, where it's very close knit. Like the group chat's always going, and like when we're in class, it just feels like a big family vibe almost.
Yeah. We got in trouble a little bit sometimes, just goofing around, but that's true though. I noticed that with every like class that was there with me, so if I was in first year, the second, third years, like we kind of looked at them like you're saying, like these are just like a bit. And I even remember like at the beginning of my program, I didn't know anybody, and I thought that they all like went to high school in Sarnia together, because they were like, I don't know, everyone's just hitting it off pretty quick, right? So that's one thing that's very true. Everyone's always cool with the groups. And then going to Algonquin, it was us in the third year group and the second year group, and we got to kind of mesh together and stuff. So that's always cool when get to meet more people and kind of blend together. We all have similar interests, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're going into the third years, at least. We're going to the Alquankin Trip this year, or at least the plan is right now, hopefully. Yeah. But what's one thing you really remember from that trip?
Oh man. So, well, okay. One thing that me and my buddy Zach Palmer did. He's a personal trainer in Sarnia now. He's a SRA graduate, and Amy Wilson too. We took a canoe and just kind of went on our own. So at times, it was a big like team building thing. I remember going and like cutting wood and cutting down trees for firewood and stuff like that. But for me, one of the personal experiences was kind of being on our own and finding our own little island and exploring on our own kind of thing. I've always been a big recreation guy, so for us to take just take the lead and go do our own thing was pretty fun. But again, the team building stuff was what really really transpired in that trip. Some people I didn't know, we got to know a little bit better, and got through this 7-day trip with no electricity. It was a different time. I didn't have like data on my phone and stuff like that, but we didn't have a cell phone for a week, nothing. So those are the two things that definitely stick out to me.
That's neat. So one thing else I wanted to ask about with your time at Lambton, looking back on it, what is the biggest thing you found? I know you kind of touched on it with running the events, but what's one thing that really prepared you to work in the sports world?
From Lambton?
Yeah, from Lambton.
For sure is hands-on experience and building that resume. And I'm sure it's something that we're going to get into more, but it kind of inadvertently happened for me. Like I went into Lambton or into SRA, like there's a lot of opportunities here. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, which is something I don't recommend, but I kind of just found myself working. I worked at the arena in Sarnia. It's the Progressive Auto Sales Arena now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was the RDC Center at the time. So I remember just getting placed there, and that hands-on experience brought me into the exact same position here in Windsor. Didn't know that was going to happen, though. You know what I mean? It's just by chance it happened. So at the time I was kind of like doing all this stuff, like I hope it pays off. And I'm doing different kind of things too, right? Like I'm doing programs, like recreational programs, and that was my big thing. That's what I thought I was going to do. And then the RBC only had so much to offer, and they offered me a spot in operations. So I get into that, and that experience carried me over. And still to this day, like applying for jobs here, I worked for the city of Windsor, and I have to go back to even before Lambton sometimes and pull all this experience out to show, because you have to show, you've had X amount of experience. So every little thing like that has really counted, even if it's a one-day thing. Like we did the sports day in Canada, sports day in Sarnia thing. I think it's a yearly event that they do, and that's on the resume, and that comes up a lot when they ask about, like running a group and stuff like that. Especially back when I was first getting hired, right? It was more recent. So all those little experiences, hands-on experiences, really prepped me, because that's what you need to actually get the job, right? So that's why I'm sure it'll come up more, but I always say, like, have a goal and stuff like that, because if you just have the diploma, it's a lot different than actually doing the job, right?
Yeah, that's cool to hear, because there's some people I talk to in like my program, and it's just, I need that diploma. And there's other people I talk to, and it's, yeah, I want to do this. They ask to do everything. And you notice the difference just in like how it's going to help out, really.
Yeah, they're not wrong, right? Like the job I'm in now, my full-time job at least doesn't have much to do with sport and recreation management. But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here, right? So yeah, the diploma helped. And if I had like maybe a straight path of where I knew I wanted to be in sports and rec, it would probably have been accomplished. But I was broad, I was wide, I was opening my horizons and stuff like that, which obviously there's nothing wrong for. But at the end of the day, it's a job, it's business. And if you don't have that vital experience and show that you can do it, then you're not going to get it. So that's my big thing. That's if people ask, I'm like, get that experience and use it.
So you're also a host of the WinCity Podcast, which is the Windsor sports-based podcast. Now, did you grow up in Windsor as well?
Yeah, totally Windsor, born and raised. Just the only time I haven't been in Windsor has been Sarnia.
So with that, what really made you want to come up with that podcast?
It's another kind of weird story. So honestly, nothing. I have no idea. Why I started doing this. My dad's a musician, and he's always encouraged me to pretty much do this. So there's a radio station in Windsor at the university that's based on volunteers and students and that, and anyone can walk in and say, I want to do a radio show. So one time, this was just over 4 years ago, so probably April 2016, I remember just being like bored. I was working at the arenas here. I ended up working at the WFCU, and in Bell River, a small town. I still work there as a rink attendant part-time. So I'm doing that, and I'm bored. I'm doing nothing creative. I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and I'm like, this would be cool to do. Like, imagine being the host or in this position, which doesn't happen too often, being the guest and stuff like that, right? So I was like, I could start a podcast, I could start a YouTube show like a lot of people do, but let's do something a little out of the box, and let's get it on the Windsor radio. At least they broadcast in Windsor, Detroit. I can have a little bit of a different flair. But what I wanted to do was bring that podcast format to the radio. I listen to a lot of Spit and Chicklets, so they open up, they talk a little bit, they play an interview, they wrap it up. That's pretty much what I wanted to bring to the radio, where it's based on Windsor sports. I'll open up, introduce myself, do an interview with you, and then after we'll talk about Spitfires and Windsor Express or whatever else is going on, right? So I wanted to bring that concept to the radio, but I wanted all my interviews to be, available anywhere. So I started uploading them online, and then eventually broke them off into two. So we have the WinCity Sports radio show and podcast. Radio show will just air little clips, talk about as much sports as we can. And then on the podcast, it could be anywhere, because the radio show is only 30 minutes, right? So the podcast can be anywhere from 30 or less to an hour or so. So I would have never thought I would have been in media, anything like that. I totally winged it, but that's what really helped me too, is not really caring too much, about what people thought. And, if people say no and stuff like that, it's just, this is what I'm doing. If you want to be part of it, join. If not, then, it's all good because it's just telling stories of people from Windsor and for fun. Right. And since then, I want to say it's taken off, but it's definitely led me to other things and hopefully will be beneficial down the line.
Yeah. Like I was looking at some of the podcasts, looking through just to see who some of your guests were. And you've had some really big names, both in the sports world, like I guess the hockey world and baseball, basketball, and the wrestling world. Which wrestling isn't commonly recognized as one of the traditional sports, but
sorry to interrupt you. I got to go back because at the time I was like, that was a part of it, right? So my cousin Scott Demore, he's a wrestler, executive or whatever, right? So it's like with that connections, I can get like some wrestlers on here. Let's do like a podcast because those are big. And then just personal interests just shift here and there. Sometimes I'm more into hockey. I'm more into MMA. I'm a martial artist as well. So yeah, that's what kind of started the colorful concept of WinCity Sports was to talk to wrestlers.
That's cool because I know a few students that I'm friends with up at SNR. Like we talk about wrestling every now and then. So that's cool to know that like you're having guests and they're you've had Jake Roberts and Garrett. Like, what were interviewing those guys like?
Honestly, like it's weird because I'm never nervous until I sit down, until I'm like, okay. And I'm like, is it really going to be them on the phone? Is it someone just pranking me? Who knows? But they're all like dealing with people, especially in like you're saying, like, and they're kind of like characters and celebrities in a way. It's hilarious, man. It's so funny just to see how like these people live their lives and talk. Like, so Jake the Snake Roberts, he was doing a tour of like, he does like a comedy stand-up show and he was doing it in Detroit, and they reached out to the radio station CJAM and we're like, hey, if you guys want Jake the Snake on your show or whatever, let us know. They forwarded it to me. I'm like, okay, let's go. Right. Yeah. So I'm talking to his manager or whatever on text, and he's like, okay, call it this time. So I call it, rings once. Hello. I'm like, hey, is this so-and-so? Like, nope, it's Jake. I'm like, oh, hey, Jake the Snake Roberts. How's it going, man? So he was just like, all right, let's go. Just a normal guy, So, and then once you get going, you get a little more comfortable, right? But at first you're kind of like, okay, let's try and steer this the right way. Let's try and make it entertaining and stuff. But then eventually you just get into conversation and you're fine.
Yeah, that's cool. And then to kind of bring it towards the hockey, you've also talked with a lot of famous hockey players and a lot of them from the Windsor area. What's that like?
It's really cool because to go back to like the Windsor Spitfire era there where I was working there, and even prior to that, going to games as a kid. And the other cool thing is Sarnia. Sometimes the connection with Sarnia, living and working at the arena there, and then guys who are from Windsor, played in Sarnia, or from Sarnia and played in Windsor or whatever, right? So it's really cool for me because like I wrote down some people here just in case, like, because sometimes they'll be like, who's your most favorite guy you've had on the show, guy or girl? And I'm like, I don't know. You got to think because I've had so many, right? But sometimes it's not even a guy who's super famous or whatever, like Dale Mitchell. So for me, when he was playing on the Spits, like he won on the Memorial Cup, their first Memorial Cup, scored 4 goals when it came 4-3. This guy's a Windsor hockey legend. Like if he's around here, he got married here, and I was like, do you guys know who that is? That's freaking Dale Mitchell, like the mustache guy from the Spitfire. So you could be like a hometown hero and not make. He barely even played in the NHL, but so some people might look at him like, he just plays overseas. I'm like, he's amazing, and he did amazing things for our team, right? So for me, it's a little bit personal to tie it to Windsor. And as well, sometimes I've had personal connections with them, like not a baseball player, but Joe Siddle played for the Tigers. He was my hockey coach when I was in Tykes or whatever. Like I played with his son. So he just happens to be there, right? So that's a little bit of a hockey connection, even though he's a baseball player, right? So yeah, in that sense, then we talk about like, the old arenas in Windsor and, favorite restaurants and stuff like that. So it's really cool to kind of get people down to earth and talk to people who I looked up to at some point in my life.
That's neat. And that's a cool connection you have with your podcast. It's almost everyone kind of does have a connection to the Windsor area. But so is Dale Mitchell your favorite guest you've had on, or is there any others you want to?
Oh, tons. But now I should have wrote down more hockey ones. But one that really stands out is someone who wasn't a hockey player, but was the wife of a hockey player. And Danny Probert is Bob Probert's his wife. Man, that was a cool experience because setting it up was after this documentary came out about him. I went to the event and stuff, and Danny Probert just follows me on the show on Twitter. So I'm like, maybe we should reach out to her. So we're setting it up, and she's like, well, why don't you come to the house? And I'm like, if you want. Like, it's not something that I usually, like, I don't always ask for, like, personal numbers or anything like that, right? So if, I don't know, they're going to invite me over, I'm not going to say no, right? And then their whole family's there. They're super nice. They show me Probert's jerseys. And to go back to the wrestling thing, he was a big wrestling fan. He was at WCW shows, and she showed me a chair that he hit, I don't know, somebody with, at the WCW show. And I'm like, this is just cool stuff to be like welcomed into someone's house and meet their family. And then another guy who was never on the show, unfortunately, is Darren McCarty, who I've met many times, hung out with him, and for whatever reason, we just can't coordinate something. But just stuff like that is it's really cool to meet people. I've done, like, from those Memorial Cup days, I've done like half the team, so the only people I'm really after now is like Ryan Ellis and Taylor Hall. But a lot of those are really cool for me. Like even guys like Mark Kundari and Eric Wellwood. Eric Wellwood was awesome. He was a great interview. The list for hockey never ends, because then I'm finding people that I never knew of. This guy, Todd Screwy St. Louis, he played for the Spits back in the day, and he was just a fighter, and he comes on and tells these awesome, hilarious stories. And Ed Jovanovski, Windsor guy, NHL Hall of Famer. Like, man, it never ends. Like, I know I'm forgetting someone, but that's the thing. And then there's more that I still haven't done, right? So,
yeah. Well, one guy I did want to ask about, because like you said, I'm also a Spin Chicklets fan. And one guy I always hear about on there is Zach Cassian. What was his interview like?
All right, so here's how it went down with Zach Cassian. I'd love to have him back, because this was a couple years ago, and in the years after, it got better with this. I got better with the interviewing and stuff. So, everyone knows Cassian's had some previous personal issues, right? So, and not poking fun at him, but this is a funny kind of concept. So I get in contact with the Edmonton Oilers, and they get me in touch with him. They're like, okay, he's going to call you at this time, this day. Doesn't call. Okay. Hey, is Zach still calling? Time difference. Did he remember? Well, Zach didn't call you? That's weird. I'll talk to him again. He'll call you in 20 minutes. Doesn't call all day. And then all of a sudden, phone rings. And he's all like, hey, man, like, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Just signal cut out. But the whole time I'm thinking, like, oh man, I hope he's all right. Like, I hope he's didn't who knows what happened with him, right? So excuse me, from there, just cool guy, man, just shooting the shit. I remember I have the whole phone call recorded, right? And I actually use it in the intro, because he called and I'm like, hello, and he's like, hey, it's Zach Cassian. So that's how you'll hear it at the beginning of the podcast, right? And I'm like, yes, we'll talk about this and whatever. He's like, yeah, okay, no problem. Sorry, like, my phone wasn't working because of the signal. He said he was out here on Lake St. Clair. So he's like, I'm in my kitchen and I'm on my island. I'm standing on the island, like the little table. So I can just picture him like, I'm like, all right, Zach Cassian, NHL player. Welcome to the show. And he's like, hey, what's up? So that was a really cool thing to talk to him. But again, I wish I would have kind of dug into it. It was probably like a 15-minute interview. I wish I would have done a little more. But he was really cool, man. And since then, he's done very well for himself. And he's working out with some guys I know here in Windsor. And I don't know him personally, but I'm proud to say he's from Windsor, part of the show kind of thing. Yeah,
because I believe it's at the Forest Glade Arena. They have the big mural of all the people who've kind of made the NHL from Windsor. And that's a really cool thing to see. I wish more arenas had that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was a kid, man, and just being like, oh, maybe I'll be on there one day,
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of cool, even just for out-of-town people, to be like, wow, this many NHL players have made it here.
Yeah.
It played here even, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing too, is if they're from here or not, whatever, they're alumni somehow. So have you been around here in Windsor?
Yeah, well, I'm from Chatham, so
Okay.
I grew up playing against Windsor, and I remember going to the arena, and if I was there early or whatever, I'd check that out and just be like, wow, all those guys actually played here. Like, I never knew Ed Jovanovski was from Windsor till I seen that mural.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot, man. There's a lot that like I haven't even got to yet, like I said, and some people who aren't around anymore, and some people who people don't really know because even if they play like one game, they put their name up there, right? But if you
Yeah,
ask me, that's a huge accomplishment. Like, tell me about your one game in the NHL. Like, probably
yeah,
talk about that for 24 hours, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Um, well, I don't want to hold you for too long, so I'll get to the last question here. What would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody looking to enter the sports world?
yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but again, I think like you should really line yourself up for something that you want to do, get that vital experience. So I speak a little bit more personally based on like my experience, right? Like I went in there like, in 3 years, I'll find something that I want to do and I'll do it. And then it didn't happen, right? So I would say you can go in with that mentality, but if you start to find something, then you need to get that vital experience to get the job. So look up job postings, look up legit job postings, and see the qualifications, and see what you can see what you need and what you need to get and stuff like that. How many years? All the people that I know that I went to school with from SRA, like when they went in, they knew they wanted to be a personal trainer and then like start a gym, or they wanted to run whatever business, and they're doing it now, and not to talk anyone down like myself. Like I went there thinking like I'll find something, and then I was like, now what do I do, right? So find your passion, find your specific passion, because that's what I went in it like. I love sports, that's all I know, so let's work in sport. But from there, you got to find a job. It's a business, and it's a pretty cutthroat environment in sport management. Can be. It's you got to build yourself. You got to sell yourself. So do all that, do it, and listen to what people tell you, but don't listen to everything. You know what's best for you. But again, see it on paper and see like if me and you want to work for ESPN, then you need whatever, go and get it, go do it.
All right. Now, this was a really cool interview. Thanks for coming on, Drake. We'll hope to have you on again in the future.
Yeah, anytime, man. Hopefully this was good for you. I liked you asking me questions about people
Yeah.
that have been on the show. It's cool because then it brings back memories, and it was cool. That was fun. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thanks again.
No worries, bro.